Hello, welcome to Launching a Kickstarter with Lee White. This is part two in the series that I'm doing, documenting my launch of a Kickstarter starting October 20th. I'm going to be doing a 124-page hardcover book, and I wanted to show you guys the process of doing it. What I've noticed as I'm going through the initial stages of setting this up is I'm going through the numbers and I'm building the book and the artwork is done for it. And as I research and talk to other people who have launched Kickstarters, one of the things that comes up with them and comes up with me too is a feeling of fear, a feeling of doubt. And I wanted to go over some ways of dealing with that and talk about it because it seems like it's a constant that most people have before they put something out there like a Kickstarter or have a gallery show or even put your portfolio out there. Dealing with your own criticisms and doubting yourself seems to be a dominant kind of theme in art, and a lot of my students have it, and I'm no exception. I have it too. So I thought it would be fun, instead of getting into the technical side of the Kickstarter right now, is, you know, with the numbers and all that stuff. I'll go into all that stuff later and how the finances work and the scheduling and all that stuff for launching a Kickstarter. But dealing with kind of this emotional roller coaster, I thought might be an important thing to cover. And so let's get into it. I'll show you 5 steps on dealing with anxiety and self-doubt and things like that. Okay, I wanted to show you 5 steps to dealing with fear and doubt. There's always ways to overcome this, and like I said a minute ago in the intro, you might be dealing with putting a portfolio out there or sending out a promotion piece, starting a new job. All this stuff it's tough, and fear and doubt come with the territory, but there are ways to eliminate it, or if not eliminate it, at least bring it down to a manageable level. And so I wanted to start out with step number 1, and that is to know that you are not alone. Know that everybody experiences this feeling of either fear and doubt or anxiety that you might not be ready to do something. Everyone goes through that, and it's totally normal. I'm interviewing a lot of people who have started Kickstarters before, and I've known a lot of people just in the professional industry over the past 15 or 20 years, and we all go through this. Every time a new book comes out, you're nervous that it's not going to do well. Every time you put a new portfolio piece online, you don't know how it's going to be received. And so it's just normal. The process of creating things and showing it to the world yields this feeling, and you have to just get used to it. But I think there is a lot of comfort in knowing that other people aren't just putting it out there and don't have this feeling. I think it's nice to know that everybody kind of goes through it, myself included. I'm putting out this video so to document the process of the Kickstarter with absolutely no idea if it's going to even work. It may completely fail. And you just have to deal with that and know that everybody who's done a Kickstarter has had to have this feeling too. They didn't know if it was going to fund or not, and a lot of people didn't fund. So you got to deal with that, and you still have to do the work though. That's the important thing, is know that everybody experiences, and you still have to do the work. Number 2, this is a big one. The more you prepare, as you guys have done this in probably other walks of life, the more you prepare, the less fear and doubt you're going to have with it. In the case of art and releasing a book on Kickstarter or releasing your portfolio, getting into the industry, the more you've prepared, the better it's going to be because you've got feedback. That's the biggest asset to preparing well is a certain amount of feedback. People saying, yeah, that works really well. They like your work, or they like what you're doing. In my case, for this Kickstarter, I've already done a soft cover version of this book about 2.5 years ago. It doesn't have all the images that this new one does, and it wasn't hardcover, but it was it was like a sampler, I guess you could say. And I sold out of that book. So that leads me to believe that this one should be at least an okay selling product, because the other one has already done pretty well. So at least I can build on that. As I'm researching a lot of other people who have done Kickstarters, and I'm trying to see what they did right and what they did wrong, and I'm trying to learn from that experience. The more that you prepare and set yourself up for success, I think the easier that it is. The hard part is just saying you're just going to do something that you've never done before. That's when you're in trouble, because you're just in uncharted territory. You don't have any feedback, you don't have any positive support, and it gets to be kind of tough. So the more preparation you do, both in terms of financial planning, in terms of getting feedback for the artwork. I mean, I've done 24 published books or whatever. So that says to me that people are willing to at least think good and well enough of my work that they will buy it. And they have bought it before. So based on that, that's why I'm moving forward. If you haven't done any of that, maybe now's not the time for the Kickstarter. Maybe you got to do a little bit more preparation, get a little more feedback before moving forward with something like that. This is a huge one, and this has helped me immensely in my career in a number of ways, which I'll go over in a second. Be okay with failing. Failure is just part of the process of being successful. I don't think anybody's been successful hasn't failed a bunch. I've got a whole stack of rejection letters from books that I've written that I submitted that didn't go anywhere. I've submitted work that where they picked another illustrator. I mean, that just comes with the process. A lot of sketches I've done that I liked got rejected and I had to do new ones. It's just a part of it. And so being okay with failing is a big deal. It's hard though. I mean, and it won't say that it ever gets easy, but to have a failure, especially if you're putting yourself out there in such a public way, but just knowing that, hey, it's possible that I'm going to fail and then you'll just move on. And, as you go through your career, you have a lot of successes and you have a lot of failures, and it just becomes part of the process. How I used failing to my advantage in my actual artistic work is I use watercolor now. If you're familiar with my work, watercolor's hard. It never gets super easy for me. It's still hard for me. And what I found in the beginning is when you're working on an expensive piece of paper, you want to be meticulous and you don't want to mess it up. And what was happening is the work was getting stiff and it was losing life, and I just wasn't getting anywhere with it. But I knew I liked the look of watercolor when people did it well. And I realized that if I could just be okay with doing an illustration in watercolor that just completely is terrible, that bombs, then I'll just repaint it. And then if that one's no good, I'll just repaint that one. And I'll keep repainting until I get something that I like. Basically, I became okay with the possibility of it going south really quick. And once I was okay with it bombing, then all of a sudden cool stuff started to happen in the work. And I wasn't so tied to it being perfect. And I got I think, work that was better than if I was just worried about everything succeeding. So I don't know if you can use that analogy, but just being okay with the process and knowing that you'll get some successes and some failures too, and it's no big deal either way. Step number 4, make the actual goal something other than the unknown result. In other words, focus on what you can control. In this process, since I'm talking about Kickstarter, that's what I'll relate this to. If I were to make the goal for this Kickstarter, I have to get X amount of dollars, otherwise I'm a failure. Or if this thing doesn't even fund at all, then I'm a failure. Then all of a sudden that could bring in kind of a crippling fear and a crippling doubt that it has to be successful. So in other words, in thinking about that idea, you can change what the goal is. And if I focus on what I can control is that I make a Kickstarter. That's what I'm control. That's what I can control. That's what I know I can do. I can make a Kickstarter. I can research it. I can do put it out there to the best of my ability. And if it doesn't fund, it doesn't fund. But my goal actually is not funding. My goal is putting something out there, putting this book out there. That's the goal. And as long as I get the Kickstarter running and I do a good job with the campaign and I do the best I can, like I said, being okay with failing earlier, it's okay if it goes south and doesn't work, because that's not my actual goal now anyway. My goal is to get it out there. Your goal should always be to make something. Jake Parker talks about this a lot in his videos, and I love it. Is be somebody who makes projects, and this is my project right now. I want it to fund, and I hope it works. But if it doesn't, it doesn't matter to me. I'll go back and I'll retool it, and then I'll put it out there again. The only thing I can control is what I put out there. I can't control the result once it's out there, and makes you feel better about it. This is a big one too. Number 5, have a plan for what happens next. I tell my students this, especially the graduating students where they've been in school for a really long time and they're used to school and they're comfortable, and all of a sudden graduation gets here and they have no idea what's going to happen next. The same thing could happen with a Kickstarter where you launch it and, whether it funds or whether it doesn't, what happens next? All of a sudden you're sitting there in this kind of blank space, and that's a lot of anxiety can happen there. So I've already written down other goals that I have and projects that I want to work on. Again, be somebody who makes projects, not just images. And so I've got a number of things that I'm doing that, whether the Kickstarter works or whether the Kickstarter doesn't work, I know what's coming next. And so the Kickstarter isn't my be all and end all. And so then I can just relax and do the thing that I want to do with the Kickstarter, and then have plans for what comes after that. So 5 pretty easy steps. I think everybody can relate to this, or I hope you can relate to these kind of steps, and hopefully that'll help you with whatever project you're doing right now, whether it's a Kickstarter or putting your work out there for the first time. These things can definitely help you out. That's it for this time. I think next time I'm going to be going into some of the details of the actual Kickstarter campaign. In other words, getting really deep into how the finances work and hopefully funding a successful Kickstarter. So I want to thank you for joining me, and I will see you soon.